presenting. First one who's going to speak, it's about sustainability, as I said before. He is Mr. Jed Brown from United Kingdom. He's the CEO of Low Season Traveler. He's going to tell us something more about sustainability. More precisely, what's the difference between being sustainable versus being seen as sustainable. Mr. Jed, you can come up. You have 20 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. Clearly, there's a few less around today. Clearly, you guys know how to party, and more power to you for that. Yes, it's my honor to speak to you this morning, to start off, I should say, about sustainability. And what's interesting about sustainability, yesterday's sessions were fantastic. I found it really fascinating. Some great panels, some great keynotes. And one of the things, as I was sat there listening to all of this, was sustainability comes through every single part of it. It's almost like the blood pumping through absolutely every element of your business is sustainability, or indeed it should be sustainability. But we're going to talk a little bit about being sustainable versus being seen as sustainable. And my very first question for you is, I'm sure you're all familiar with these signs, which if you stay in hotels as often as I do, you'll be well used to them. They're always hanging on the towel racks. And it says, please, we care for the planet, always, we care for the planet. Save the planet. Help us to do our bit to save the planet by reusing your towels. My question is that being sustainable, or is that being seen to be sustainable? Because I would say it's greenwashing. Clear and simple, it's greenwashing. It's about putting the onus of responsibility purely onto the guests without saying what you as a property are doing. It's a way that you save money, and you're not telling us what you're giving back. It annoys me. Every time I'm in a hotel and I see these things, I just think, you know, if you started off that little thing on the towels, and you said, last year we invested 20,000 euros in sustainable practices. And we were able to do that because guests like you reused your towels. Please help us to continue this work by reusing your towels. Slight difference, very subtle, but it makes a big difference. It's showing us you're actually investing in sustainability as well. We're partners in this together, you and I, guest and hotel. Anyway, I digress. My name is Jed Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Low Season Traveler, the world's first and to date only, bizarrely, organization which is entirely dedicated to the promotion of the low seasons in each destination that we feature. I'm also the executive director and one of the founding directors of the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage, which is all about the protection and preservation of culture and heritage for future generations. I'm a podcast host, and I'm a former executive at Keone, Thomas Cook, My Travel, and a few other companies. And I'm very proudly the founding member of these organizations here, which we'll go into later. Once upon a time, we were masters of long-term thinking. And this is really important because when we're talking about sustainability, we are talking about long-term thinking. And as a race, we used to be brilliant at this. And I think we've lost our way a little bit over recent years. What you can see here are images of cathedrals. They're different cathedrals. I didn't do that much research on it. But the ancient cathedral builders in Europe were masters of long-term planning. In their primitive technology, it would take them up to 200 years, maybe even 300 years, to build these fantastic monuments, which you can see. And what that meant was that the people who were digging the foundations were doing so knowing that if they made a mistake, future generations, maybe their children, or their grandchildren actually, would have huge problems further down the line. Those foundations had to be done right. They did it right, and they did it diligently, even though they knew they would never see the finished cathedral. They were never going to see that beautiful cathedral, which you can see there in front of you. But they did it diligently anyway. The same with the people who were carving those first foundation stones, who were creating the stained glass windows even. They knew they would never see the finished article, yet it didn't stop them from doing their absolute best in everything that they do. Now, one example of this was in the 1980s. in the UK. I think it was in Oxfordshire or Cambridgeshire, one of the shires anyway. There was a cathedral there which has stood for, I don't know, about 700-800 years. Beautiful, big building. And the roof was supported by huge oak trusses, colossal oak trusses. And they started to get woodworm in the 80s. And this was a major problem. They were like, what the heck are we going to do? Where are we going to find oak of that magnitude to make sure that we can repair this in the way that it was originally built? And it was a big problem. Word eventually got round, and a local farmer came forward, and he said, we've been waiting for your call. My family have been waiting generations for this very moment. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, when the architects, hundreds of years ago, when they first laid the foundations and the plans for what they were going to do, they knew that oak beams will only last for a few hundred years, maybe 500 years, and they would need replacing. So do you know what they did? These were the architects at the time. The first thing they did before laying foundations for the cathedral was they planted an oak forest, not too far from where the cathedral is, knowing that that will be used in 800 years' time to replenish the oak beams when they go. That's long-term thinking. That's planning. And that's what we were brilliant at, and that's what we've lost. But we need to regain it really quickly when we grapple with climate change and sustainability. So what are we talking about when we talk about sustainability? I think it's really important that we, at the very outset, we get to grips with what we mean by sustainability. And it's defined by the United Nations as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Think about that sentence, because that's what we're talking about with sustainability. Pretty low bar, in my opinion. Pretty low bar. Basically, do what you can to live, and just don't screw it up for future generations. That's it. It's a very, very low bar. If I had my way, we'd be changing that to meeting the needs of the present whilst ensuring the ability of future generations can meet their own needs. I think that would be a little bit stronger, but anyway. But overall, what we're talking about with sustainability is people, planet, and profit, those three things. Let's start off with people. And I want to give us a little bit of an overview as to where we're up to today in the world. Quick show of hands. I know we're all a little bit hungover. Anybody know how many people are in the world today? Whoever said 8 million, I heard 8 million there somewhere. Yeah, basically in 2 weeks' time, roughly the middle of November, we're going to hit 8 billion. The most people that have ever lived on our planet, which is quite a big milestone. These are the predictions. You're going to see some stats and figures. Forgive me. I know that you're not in the mood for stats and figures, but it's really important because what we're talking about here is the scientific fact as far as we know it today. And that's why this is important. But when we're talking about these future trends, which have been done by experts at the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and other such bodies, think about how this impacts your business. Think about these trends. And what I've tried to do is on a lot of these trends, you'll see it to 2050. I've tried to further break it down to 2030 because I think the next 8 years, it's more of a manageable chunk and it gives us a little bit more focus as to what's happening in the next 8 years. So we're currently on 8 billion. By 2030, it's going to be 8.5 billion. And yeah, 1 billion more in the next 27 years. And 27 years is not a long time. It sounds like a long time. But when I was working this out, and I was thinking, well, what was 27 years ago? And it was 1995. And I'm sorry, but 1995, as far as I'm concerned, was like yesterday. That's frighteningly recent. So when we're talking about 27 years' time, it's coming very, very soon. And for anybody, if there is anybody young enough in the audience to be a millennial or even a Gen Z, that's the stage 2030 and just after when you're really going to be coming to your own. It's going to be an aging population. Again, these are the facts. The vast majority of the world's population already is of an adult age. It's going to be even more so. What you're looking at is the blue line there. It's not a helpful age categorization, 25 to 65. It's like a bit broad for my liking. But you're talking about adults who are conceivably earning. They've got spending potential, all of that kind of stuff. The younger age groups, 0 to 14, 15 to 24, really starting to tail off in the next sort of 10, 20 years. And the 65 plus massively going up. So there's going to be an awful lot of the older generation in future years, probably governed by the younger generation. So we need to think about that with our actions today, by the way. One of the other major characteristics moving forward is the growing middle class. And when we talk about middle class, what we're talking about is people who've been elevated to such a degree where they've got their own home, they've got health and retirement security, college education for the kids, family vacations, they travel. Once they get to middle class status and they're relatively comfortable, they have the ability to travel. September 2018 was a really big month for the world because for the first time in human history, the people who were in middle class or rich, so relatively comfortable, was exactly the same number as those who were poor and vulnerable. Never happened before in human history, and it happened in September 2018. Now it's more on the middle class rich side of things, and that's the trend that's going to continue. We haven't got much to be proud of as a human race, but that's something that we should be hugely proud of. We're elevating people out of poverty and vulnerability. Another 1 billion will join the middle class in the next 8 years. Again, as far as we know it today, this is factual. This is done from, this particular one's from the Brookings Institute, which is a think tank on all of these things. Similar figures with the World Economic Forum. I think they're predicting closer to 1.5 billion entering middle class. And that's in the next 8 years. At this point, I always like to highlight, we don't all deal in millions and billions. I don't deal in millions and billions. Maybe you guys do, I don't know. But I don't deal in millions and billions. The difference between a million and a billion, really important to point this out. If you go back 1 million seconds from right now, you're about 13 days in the past. If you go back 1 billion seconds from right now, you're about 35 years ago. That's the difference between a million and a billion. It's colossal. When you talk about an extra billion, it's a monstrously big number. And you need to really get your heads around that. Because there will be opportunities with this growing middle class, but there will also be threats. Where are they coming from? Mostly from Asia, you won't be surprised to know. China is going to be a huge amount, 350 million more, 380 million more in India, only 130 million more in middle class in the rest of the world. The middle class, once they get to middle class status and they have this disposable income, they travel naturally. And it's right that they should do so. They should experience the world. At the start of the 21st century, 10.5 million overseas trips were made by the Chinese. That was just in 2000. In 2017, it was 145 million. And that's going to exceed 400 million by 2030. So there's going to be a lot more people traveling in the world that today are not traveling in the world. 2019, pre-pandemic, the glory days, we saw 1.5 billion international tourist arrivals. It took over 100 years, gradually, of the tourism industry building up its way to get to that figure. And it led to this. This is what we saw. When I show you these pictures, by the way, really think, with each one of these people, is that the experience they signed up for when they were booking their trip? Is that what they thought they were going to get? I don't think so. Colosseum, horrendous. I've never been to the Colosseum. I've no desire at this stage. And that I believe is Dubrovnik. And this, Barcelona. As well, when we're thinking about what these people signed up for when they booked their vacation, think about if you live there. How utterly horrendous that must be. I can't imagine it. I don't live anywhere that's vaguely touristy. And it also led to scenes like this. So that's what 1.5 billion international arrivals did to us around the world. Now imagine in the next 7 years, another 1.5 billion arrivals in addition to that. 7 years to double arrivals. Really, that's what we're looking at. It's a grave picture. You need to promote your low seasons. That's why I set up my organization. And I still cannot believe we're the only organization in the world that focus on this, because it's so glaringly obvious. You're going to have to. You're going to have to, because you're not going to be able to build more resorts and hotels when you know that those hotels are going to be used for only 6 months of the year. Is that a sustainable use of those building properties? We know that building properties accounts for 30%, the built environment accounts for 30% of global emissions. Is that the best use? Using a property for 6 months of the year? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let's talk a bit about the planet. This is the heavy one. Sorry, guys. Sorry. But you should know all of this stuff anyway. Hopefully I'm telling you nothing new. The world is heating up. Surprise. If there's anybody in the audience like me who was born in the 70s, the Earth has increased by 1 degree in our lifetime. It doesn't sound like much. Sometimes I wish we measured these things in millidegrees or microdegrees, because 1,000 millidegrees just sounds so much more shit. What are we doing? 1 degree just sounds a bit like, it's only 1 degree, it's not that bad. No, it is bad, I can assure you. The challenge that we've got, by the way, as we're monitoring this, is we just don't know what it looks like. When you get to 3 degrees, we're not really sure of exactly how bad it is. We know it's colossally bad, but it's whether it's dinosaur land or whether it's something that vaguely we might be able to exist on. We just don't know. But we're getting very close to 1.5 degrees, really close. This is a handy little tool which has come out from the United Nations, telling us that there's going to be a 41% increase in area burned by wildfires in the Mediterranean summer on 1.5, 62 in if it's plus 2%, and 97% if it gets to plus 3. Latest estimates could be worse than that, might not be as bad. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch, another proud moment for humanity here. If you're not familiar with it, are any of you familiar with this? The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. There's actually not just one, there's a few of them. Roughly the size of France, each one. They're huge. And basically it's basically where all of the plastic, mostly the single-use plastic, that's where it all ends up. At some stage in its life cycle, it will end up in the oceans somewhere. We know that plastic doesn't biodegrade at all. Once we create plastic, it's there forever. Pretty much, it's there forever. Never, ever goes away. We can start to clean this stuff up, but it does burn emissions actually trying to clean it up and to recycling it. That does actually take a lot as well. But there's some great projects out there that are doing their best to try and clean this up. We've got a responsibility to stop adding to it, though. And that's a mindset. You need to get in the mindset of when you're seeing tiny pieces of plastic. And once you get into this mindset, by the way, you see it everywhere. Any relatively useless pieces of plastic, single-use plastic, plastic forks, whatever, magnets, you name it, you start questioning that. Why are we producing this stuff? Eventually, it's going to end up in the ocean somewhere, where it's going to get consumed by fish. What happens to it is it doesn't biodegrade, but it breaks down into micro granules of plastic. Never fully disappears, but it gets smaller and smaller, and eventually it's consumed by fish. And that's a problem in its own right. But then, of course, it enters the food chain for all of us as well. So, conceivably, we'll be eating plastic if we're not already. And I'm sorry this sounds grim, but it's really important that ignorance is no defense moving forward. These are the facts. These are the absolute facts. By 2030, the United Nations are telling us that there will be as much garbage in our oceans as there are fish in the oceans. Pretty scary stuff, actually. So perspective is absolutely everything when we're talking about sustainability, the environment, and the climate change challenge. We thought the COVID-19 was the mother of all problems we were going to deal with. Then it's the recession which followed it, which is where we're up to now, and we still don't know how this is going to pan out, but it looks pretty bad at the moment for the winter. But climate change is just the mother of all of the problems that we've got to deal with on a daily basis. So yeah. It is scary, and I'm sorry that that's so heavy first thing in the morning. And that scariness, that can lead to inertia, and that's really scary in itself. What we do is, it's so overwhelming, we think, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. What can I do in my own little way? And that's scary, because a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. You have to take that first single step. Baby steps are okay, so long as you're taking a step forward in the right direction. And that's the main thrust of the message here today, is make a start on that sustainable journey. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect, doesn't matter if it's only X, Y, or Z, just make the start. Because the worst thing in the world to be confronted with, as any student will tell you, is a blank piece of paper. That's the hardest thing to deal with. Once you've got something, you're away. People. So these are some of the things that you can do to start your journey. Naturally, I'm going to tell you, as the founder and CEO of Low Season Traveller, I'm going to say, yeah, partner with Low Season Traveller. It costs from £250 per year. You're engaging with a new audience who are only seeking to travel during the low seasons, by the way. That's the audience that we're curating. It demonstrates actions towards more responsible tourism, reduces the pressure on peak seasons, makes you a better neighbour. You're doing something for your community, trying to ease the pressure on the peak seasons. And you should shout about it if you do join with us. I don't know if the lady is still here from Kotor Blue Bay in Montenegro. There she is. Very proudly a partner. I'm delighted to be working with you on that. People, partner with WETAC, the World Tourism Association for Culture and Heritage, committed to protecting and preserving your local historical and cultural heritage. Starts at $50, $50 a year. So, you know, financially, there's no barrier here on the finance side of things. But the work that these guys do is truly incredible. They are protecting and preserving cultural heritage in destinations all around the world. Engages with cultural heritage travelers. And by the way, cultural heritage travelers, they travel all throughout the year. In fact, they get a better experience in the low seasons, and that's why we work really closely with these guys. And it demonstrates actions towards the preservation of cultural heritage. Planet. Sign up to Tourism Declares. It's a not-for-profit organization, free of charge. All you need to do is share what your sustainability action plan is. Share it with them, put it on their website, and then you can use the Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency Partner badge on your website. Again, you're demonstrating you're taking this seriously. It's on our radar, and we take it seriously. And I think that's really important. Nice, easy one to do. Sign up to the SunX program. Program set up by a guy called Jeffrey Lippman, Professor Jeffrey Lippman. I should give him his full title. He earned it. He used to be a Director General at IATA. He also was on the executive chairmanship of the World Travel and Tourism Council. Super, super smart guy. This program that he set up with all of their different sort of colleagues, it's free of charge. You share your sustainability actions. You get a whole raft of really great resources to help you on your sustainability journey, all free of charge. You just need to sign up with these guys, put your pledge down there, and then start to use all of the resources. You also get to be a guest on the Climate-Friendly Travel podcast, which I host, and that's actually a lot of fun as well. And it's great coverage for you. It gives you really good, positive PR. Reach out to Ecotel. This is set up by two Belgian girls, ladies. They're quite young, but they're super, super smart. But they can help you with your sustainability plan. They specifically help hotels and properties. They help them to get accreditation and certification. And they're really super knowledgeable, and they're very approachable as well. And if we do all of that, the profit side, ironically, when we're talking about business, is probably the easiest bit that will come into this. Because if we do all of that right, it will naturally lead to profit. Right now, I feel like sustainability is still a competitive advantage. If we do it right and if we communicate it right, pretty much. I think we're very, very close, though, to it being the bare minimum. You're going to have that to survive. It's going to be demanded by future generations. Kids at school are learning about this stuff at a huge rate, and in the next 8 to 10 years, they're reaching adulthood, and they're going to be demanding this stuff. Or you know, hang your signs up and just kind of hope for the best, but I don't really think that is going to be much of an option. Getting towards the end now. Don't worry, I don't know how we're doing for time. We're okay, okay. Okay, we're at the end. Okay, I'll whiz through this. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I love this saying. It was said to me by a manager years ago. Doing something good enough, making a good enough start is good enough. Don't not do it because it's not perfect. Until it's perfect, we're not going to do anything on sustainability. We need to get our ducks in line. Do something. Do something. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. The next generation are coming, and they're coming in the next 8 to 10 years. On this slide, I was going to put, and they're pissed. But they are, and rightly so, and rightly so. We were talking yesterday about how you engage your teams in hotels or your DMCs or your tour companies. How do we engage them? How do we engage the younger generation? They're looking for a cause. They're looking for something to believe in. This is something that they can believe in because this is reality in their lifetime. The next 27 years is when they're going to really reach their maturity. This is something they can believe in, and it's something they do believe in, and this is something which will really get them on side. So you want to engage with the younger generation and get them working for your properties and helping out. Be really big on sustainability, and you'll find that they'll come actually a lot easier. That's me. Thank you very much. Sorry if I ran over. Please do reach out if you've got any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.